Cool, I'm recording now. Thank you once again, Emilio Castillo of the great Tower of Power. Thank you for coming on to the conversation with Uncontaminated Sound. Myself, I'm curious, how have you been adjusting with this whole kind of COVID? I've been asking a lot of people now, particularly musicians when they've had tour dates or they've had to cancel a lot of tours and live performances. How is that? Has this kind of pandemic affected your tour dates, or have you been drastically affected in that way? I guess to open up.
Yes, I have been drastically affected. We just released our new album, Step Up, on Mac Avenue Records, March 20th. And no sooner did we do that, everybody got locked down,
Yeah.
And all the touring was canceled. We were getting ready. The following Tuesday, I was leaving for the East Coast, and I have the whole year booked and adding more dates constantly. Now we've rebooked that tour, and we're hoping that, the rebooking will work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's affected us, and that means that this money-eating machine called Tower of Power is bringing in no money, and yet we still have to pay salaries and pay the bills, and so that's difficult. And we don't know how long we can go with that. I think we're good for till the end of next month, maybe, but not definitely. And so it's a wake-up call. It's like, okay, now what? You get sort of comfortable, with your life. I go in and out all the time. I work 200 days a year. I've done that for 54 years, and now all of a sudden I'm home all the time. But like I say, my PR girl, Fiona Bloom, she's just got me besieged with interviews and making little videos. And I did a Facebook Q&A, and my friend here in town, who is the engineer that I use when I do recording in town, he teaches at ASU, a recording class. And I've spoken for him at his class over the last few years, maybe 3-4 times. And he had me and David Garibaldi, my drummer, on, and we taught the class for like 2 hours, and I invited some of my past members on there. So, we're doing stuff. I wrote a song recently with the band Lettuce. Approached me, and they had this groove, and they wanted me to write something related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I wrote this really cool song. It came out really good, and we'll see where that goes. So yeah, it's a change, but it's not all bad, and I'm coping pretty well. I'm a believer, I believe in God. That's who I am. And so no matter what comes down the pike, that's where I go for reassurance and encouragement and guidance. And guess what? He's coming through like he always does.
Now, is your family safe? I assume safe and healthy. Everybody on that end too.
Yeah, I have 5 children, and they're all healthy, and dealing with the various guidance from the government.
Yeah.
And married here. I got married last June, and so I'm here with my wife in our home. And for a guy who leaves 200 days out of the year, she's got daddy home here. For more than she's ever had him, probably.
Yeah. Well, talking about if we touching base on like 200 days a year, how do you at this point? How do you find the stamina or just the energy to continuously go out and tour and play? What is it? Why do you continue to, what drives you to continuously to do 200 days a year?
Well, I've done it for so long. It's my way of life. I'm in the recovery community. I've been sober 32 years. And, those people, they know what I do. They're all friends of mine. And they're like, how do you do it? How do you travel so much? And I just look at them, I say, it's all I've ever done. It's what I know. So I don't think of it as like, oh, got to gear up for this, man. It's like, this is what I do all the time. And to be real honest, I think it's kept me a lot younger than a lot of people that I know that I grew up with. For some reason, the lifestyle, the music, the camaraderie, the fans. They keep me young and keep me committed. And you know, it's a really creative job that I have. I wear a lot of hats. You know, I'm the band leader. I play second tenor saxophone. I sing background. I sing some lead. I'm the main songwriter in the band with my partner, Doc Kupka. I produce the records. You know, I have a horn section that plays for countless other artists. And you know, each one of those hats gives me a lot of fulfillment. I mean, it's better than any drug I ever did. When I write a song, my brain is zinging. You know, when I'm finished, like, you know, I just finished this tune, like I said, for this band, Lettuce. And, you know, for 2 days, it was just like zinging, man. I felt like I was high, you know. And it's the same thing when I go do a concert and the crowd is really, really excited and we're firing on all 10 cylinders. You know, it's like being high, man. It feels so good, you know, when I produce a recording session or I sing in a recording session or play my horn in a recording session. You know, it's very exhilarating. It feels really good. So it's not as though I got to gear up for 200 days of work. I love it. I live it.
Yeah, it's like totally, you know, contradictory to, you know, people I know who work in office are just kind of going through the motions in that meat grinder, I guess, where they just, you know, go in at 9, come out at 5, maybe go to a bar or something, and then they do it over again. So I find it fascinating, this select few that get to do it, you know, particularly yourself over the span of time, you know, constantly as a, you know, a full-time profession. Stepping back though, did you always, you grew up in Detroit, correct? And then transplanted to, is it Northern California, around the age of 11, am I correct?
Yeah, at 11 years old, my dad moved us to the Bay Area. And we were in San Francisco for like 3 months and then moved out to a suburb called Fremont, where I went to high school, Fremont, California. As soon as I graduated, I left Fremont and went to Oakland. I had met Doc while I was still living in Fremont. And we had started writing, and the band was my passion. And I moved to Oakland with him, and we wrote songs and got signed by Bill Graham to our first record deal. Became a regular at the Fillmore West and Winterland, and Day on the Green, a lot of big Bill Graham concerts, and started my touring career.
Now, what first drove you to music? What was that you know, what was that internal calling that led you to music? It could have been visual arts, it could have been something else, but why music and why funk and soul and the saxophone as well?
Well, I got in a little trouble. My brother, I have a brother that's 10 months older than me, my brother Jack. And we had a friend around the corner named Jody Lopez. And the three of us were going to the pool at the high school. Summertime just started. Every day we would go to the swimming pool, you know, go there, have the swimming pool, look at the girls, you know. And we're on our way there. And there were these T-shirts that young men were wearing at the time that were sort of high-collared and really tight on your biceps. And came in these sort of pastel colors, and all the young guys were wearing them. And we got the idea, you know, we'll walk through the mall, and we'll go through Mervyn's, and we'll put on 3 of those T-shirts, and we'll put our shirt over it and walk out. And we did that. I had a really short crime career, caught the first time. And, you know, the manager's waiting outside the door, and he calls my dad, and my dad comes and gets me, and he makes me apologize to the guy, and he gives me a notebook and says, fill this, me and my brother both, fill this notebook with the reason why you'll never steal again. And while you're in that room doing that, think of something that's going to keep you out of trouble for the rest of the summer, or you're never coming out of that room again. And the Beatles had just come out, and Jody around the corner had just got back from a vacation where he got a guitar in Mexico. And we said, we want to play music, Dad, because, you know, kids were starting to start bands and stuff, you know. And he said, get in the car. And we got in the car, and he drove us to Allegro Music, and we pointed up to the wall because all the instruments were hanging on the wall. And I pointed to the saxophone, and I'll tell you why. my dad was a bartender, and he bartended at this place. It was kind of like Caesar's Palace. It was in Palo Alto, and it was a hotel called the Cabana Hotel, owned by the people that owned Caesar's. And he worked in the lounge called Nero's Nook, where they had bands like the Big Beats and the Swingin' Lads. They called them show bands. And these bands had horns, you know, trumpet, clarinet, trombone, tenor sax. And to me, we would go pick my dad up sometimes at work in the afternoon, and the band would be rehearsing on the stage. And while we're waiting for my dad, I'd be watching him. I thought the sax player was the coolest guy, you know. And my brother, he thought the drummer was the coolest guy. So when my dad said, whatever you want, I pointed right to the saxophone, and my brother pointed to the drums. And then we went home, and I always tell people, you know, I like to say that we practiced our instruments diligently and took lessons, and then we started a band. But we did it totally backwards. We started the band that day, and then we learned how to play.
Yeah.
And for me, the band really became my instrument. I tell people all the time, people think I'm a fabulous sax player because I'm leader of Tower of Power and I'm in the Tower of Power horns. All I play is parts. I'm a very limited saxophone player. I don't solo, you know, and you know, I play keyboards, but I'm very limited on keyboards. I know all the chords. I can write on it. I play guitar. I'm very limited on guitar. My real instrument rather, is the band. I'm really good at facilitating musicians to play together and make a sound together that's unique. And what happened for us is we played rock and roll for about a year and a half and we started to get pretty good. My dad got us all different kinds of teachers. And one day I saw this band. We were opening for this band called the Spiders, Spyders. They were a local soul band in the East Bay, and they were mostly white. They had a 6'3" black lady that sang lead named Trudy Johnson, but she only came up for part of the set. They had this white guy playing organ named Dennis Delacqua, and he sang so soulful. Even black people would come and shake their heads. They couldn't believe how soulful this band was. And they changed my life that night. I walked out of that place and I said, I'm gonna make my band like that. And I hired a trumpet the next day. I already had a saxophone, and I played sax. So we went from that to having 3 horns, and I patted myself after the Spiders. They had very good background vocals, really tight horn arrangements, and a very well thought out rhythm section, and a super soulful lead singer. And I aimed for that, you know, and eventually, you know, they broke up and we became Tower of Power.
Cool. I was wondering, yeah, I was kind of wondering, because I'm not too familiar with musical acumen, or why would one arrange, you know, have 5 horns in a band? You know, I was curious of how you set that up, and you know, the foundational elements to, you know, a soul and funk band. And I was curious about that. And
I think I just got carried away, man.
yeah.
You know, I hired Mick Gillette on the trumpet. He was a fabulous trumpet player, you know, and it sounded good to me, you know. And then Mick left, and I got another guy, but then Mick wanted to come back, so I just brought him back, and you know, and then I met Doc, and I added a baritone, and it just became what it was, and we sort of became known for that. So there was no turning back. You know, I tell people these days when we do horn section clinics for young people, and you know, they ask questions, and they say, "You have any advice for young musicians starting a band?" I go, "Yeah, start a trio." You know, because here I am, you know, 50 years later with a 10-piece band, and we have to work, you know, because if we don't, people don't eat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so was your first big performance at the Fillmore West back then? And is that when you, or did you meet Bill before that, and then he booked you at Fillmore West?
No, what happened was Bill Graham, you know, he was the biggest thing in rock music, and people from all over the world were flying to the Bay Area, you know, to try to play at the Fillmore West. And by then he had the Fillmore East too, but really it all started in San Francisco at the original Fillmore, and then he bought the Carousel Ballroom, and that became the Fillmore West. And he was branching out, and he got a deal with Atlantic Records and Columbia Records to start his own labels. So he had two record labels. One was Fillmore Records on Columbia, distributed by Columbia. And the other one was San Francisco Records, distributed by Atlantic. And all these people were trying to get on that label. He had a producer that he flew out from New York that had produced the Moby Grape, and his name was David Rubinson. And the two of them were starting this empire, this recording company empire, you know. And everybody was trying to get on these labels. And I mean, famous people were trying to get signed, you know. And we wanted to get on, and what we really wanted to do, we wanted to play at the Fillmore West. You know, we were playing these sort of ghetto nightclubs and, you know, teenage soul dances. It was small time, but we realized what was happening was the Fillmore. We wanted to get in there. We were named the Motowns at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we knew we were going to get in with a name like that, and with razor cuts and suits and all that. Everybody's growing their hair long and, you know, dressing like hippies. And, you know, we just kind of got with the times and chose the name Tower of Power. And we got an audition at the Fillmore. And somehow, you know, Bill Graham liked us. We were it was on a Tuesday night. That's when the auditions were. And there was like 5 bands. And they were all rock bands, you know, 3 guitars and drums, or 2 guitars and the keyboard and drums. And they all played rock music, you know. We were the only soul band there, and we came on last. And when we walked out, you know, they saw these horns, and we were dressed real, you know, we were broke, you know, so real scraggly dressed. And people were tired because they just watched 4 whole bands, you know, and they saw us and they said, what's this? They turned around, started walking out, you know. And we hit with this James Brown song called Open the Door. We did it instrumental style. And it went, and we were strutting on the boulevard, man, playing for all we were worth, because it was our last chance, you know. We were at the end of our rope. It was like somebody said about face. Everybody turned around and started marching back in. And I saw this head peep out of the back by the snack bar. That was Bill Graham's office. You know, he obviously checked us out. I guess David Rubinson and some of his cronies were there, and he was a fan of soul music, and so was Bill. And they were fans of horns, and they were fans of rhythm. And the next thing we knew, I told the guys, you know, we were at the end of our rope, so I told them, you know what, my parents had moved back to Detroit. I said, you know what, I'm going back to Detroit. If nothing happens with this, I'm not coming back. And, you know, everybody was devastated. We thought it was the end. And then Doc called me about 2 days later, and he says, you got to come back. You got to come back. He dug it. He dug it. And I said, who dug it? And he goes, Bill Graham. He wants to sign us. And I had a little Vox organ that I didn't like to play. I told him, hock the Vox organ and send me a ticket. And I flew back, and he offered us a record deal, to our surprise. And we got signed.
Now, was that after you were signed? Did it take a few years to really get going, or was it were you off and going immediately after that point of signage? Or?
Well, it was about a year before we actually made the record. Maybe not quite a year, you know. And the producer, David Rubinson, said he didn't like the way my brother played drums, and he didn't like the way Jody played guitar. And he told me, I'm going to bring in some session guys to play on the record. And we were like, what? This is a band. You know, we just, that thought never occurred to us. And we weren't going for it. But what happened was all the other guys got really antsy, and they thought they were going to lose the record deal, you know. Yeah. And so it got so uncomfortable for my brother and for Jody and for me. I told them, I'll take Rocco and my brother and Jody, and we'll just start again. We're the ones that started the band. I'll just do it again. You guys can have the record deal. You go be Tower of Power, and I'll start over. But then I saw David Garibaldi one night sitting in with the band when we used to play off nights. And he was a good drummer, and I recommended to them, I said, you know, you should get that drummer that's over there. And they were like, well, we're going to look at some different guys. They were kind of really scattered. And at the last minute, my brother said, you know, I don't think you should pass on this opportunity. I think you should stay. Those guys are lost without you. You're the leader. And I'm going to go back to Detroit. I think Mom and Dad needs one of us to come back to Detroit. You mind you, I'm 17 years old at this time.
Yeah.
He's 18, barely, you know. And so I told him I'm going to stay, and we're going to have David Garibaldi and this guy Willie Fulton, who I knew from another band called Stuff. And you know, they were at first, like, as soon as they heard him play, there was no question. And as soon as David Rubinson heard him play, there was no question. And then took us in immediately, recorded the first album, East Bay Grease. It was the first one that he sort of did all by himself. Fred Catero was his engineer. He came in and set all the mics up, and then he let Dave run it. And Dave recorded it and mixed it all in 2 weeks. And we were a regional hit pretty quickly. And then we went out on tour, no records in the stores, and it was difficult. And then, you know, things changed after that. But yeah, you know, within a year and a half, we were on the radio.
That's
Locally.
you know, at that time, what was the sound like around that region? Was there like a Bay Area kind of unique sounds coming in? Obviously, you had like the hippie-ish kind of music and stuff, but what what elements of culture did you pull in to make the foundations for your sound? I guess if that's the correct way
You
of
know,
looking at it.
we were a soul band.
Yeah, yeah,
We weren't like the others.
yeah.
It was about psychedelic music. Big Brother and the Holding Company, Quicksilver, Messenger Service, Grateful Dead, you know. And that had sort of run its course for about, they were like the Vogue for about 3 years. And then Santana came out and he had a lot of rhythm and Bill Graham was managing them. And then he liked us and we were soulful. And so, you know, a lot of different eclectic music started coming through there, because one of the things Bill Graham did was he sort of tweaked the collective ear of the public in the Bay Area by bringing in different kinds of acts. When you went to the Fillmore, you didn't always see 3 psychedelic acts. You might see, you know, the Grateful Dead might be headlining, but before them was Buddy Guy, and before him was Tito Puente. You know, and the next night was, you know, Quicksilver, Messenger Service, and Sam and Dave and Miles Davis. You know, he just was put in all these eclectic acts and tweaked the collective ear of the Bay Area, which everybody was looking at the Bay. The whole world was looking at the Bay. So as their ear was being tweaked and widened and broadened, the whole world started to be tweaked, widened and broadened. Pretty soon, same thing at the Fillmore East, and, you know, other ballrooms started popping up trying to copy his, you know, Fillmore West, Fillmore East, and people started opening their minds, and so we stayed true to, you know, playing soul music.
Now, what is it about soul music that just makes you like a body, or you know, the kind of it's I find it kind of like a spiritual experience. You know, your whole body moves to it immediately. Listen to your tracks, and just it's a different experience comparatively to listen to rock or any other type of music. Do you have any inkling of why that is? Have you ever thought about that, like that physical experience of soul? Um,
I believe that soul music is a type of music that moves you emotionally and physically. So that when you're listening to a soul music concert and a great singer is selling some great lyrics, he's either tugging at your heart or urging you to dance. And so you should walk out of there emotionally spent and sweaty.
yeah. So at the time, or you were starting up, you signed and you're picking up, you know, traction. At the time, did you face any hurdles you had to overcome too, like any challenges you had to face? I could imagine starting out it was a bit tough, but then obviously when you get bigger and bigger, it gets a bit easier. But was there any just really obstacles you kind of had to overcome? And that
The
and the
biggest
likes of that?
obstacle in our early career was us.
Hmm.
You know, it was a time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and we did our share and most of your share as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that almost was our undoing.
Mm.
And I did that for 20 years. And so, I look at it like I did everything possible, made every mistake I could possibly make to ruin my career, but God had other plans for me. And in 1988, somehow, some way, I was brought to my knees and went into a treatment facility and got sober and started a spiritual path. And a year later, my partner, Doc, my songwriting partner, he did the same. And pretty soon we started praying. Pretty soon the whole band was praying, and things have gone better ever since. So that was the biggest obstacle to overcome, ourselves. We got in our own way a lot, and learned a lot of great lessons from that. That's a lot of times adversity is what God uses to shape you and mold you in His image. And I'm grateful for every mistake I ever made, and for what I learned from it.
Like I can imagine over the years as well, you've had different pieces move in and out of the band, the core foundation still being there. How did you keep the band going with that, kind of large band, throughout, 70s, 80s, 90s, now, 2010s and now 2020? It's like, how did you kind of manage those all those moving parts?
Well, my patented answer these days is God did it, I just showed up.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect to it as well, and that is that we learned a real hard lesson at the end of the 70s about staying true to our sound. It was a time of disco, and then after the disco experience, it was new wave and punk rock. And, there were bands like the Motels and the Knack and Devo, and, all people wanted to hear was bands that they never heard of with weird names. And anybody that was over 5 years in the business, they looked at them as dinosaurs. And so we were perceived as a dinosaur. We went through a very hard time. But during the time of disco, the record company, which was Columbia at the time, they were trying to get us to redo a disco song or try to sound like the other bands so we can get you airplay. They looked at us as a problem that needed to be solved. And of course, that's a losing battle immediately. If that's how you perceive your act, you've already lost the war. We didn't know that at the time, so we're just trying to please them. They're giving us a lot of money, and so we're recording the Motown song "Nowhere to Run," and we're working with different producers. They insisted on, bringing in other producers, and I had always produced the records, and then things just dried up. Eventually, we couldn't sound like the other bands. We didn't sound like them. And for a while, we made the mistake of thinking that was a curse. Like, why can't we sound like those guys so we can get on the radio? It's a curse, And then what happened is everything dried up. The record company went away. We couldn't buy a record deal, but we still could play live. We had fans, and we still could get gigs. It was slower, but, we could get by. And I told the guys, I go, you know what? No more of this trying to be like them, do a disco song, a Motown song, disco style. No more of that. Let's just keep writing the songs, trying them out on our fans, do it like we've always done it. And as soon as we went back to that, things got better. And we learned an important lesson. It's not a curse that we don't sound like other bands. It's a blessing. And we realized, no, we have our own particular signature, our own particular voice that separates us out from the others. And then we just sort of slowly kept growing until here I am 52 years later, and we stayed true. That was an important lesson for us. So anyway, the point I was making is that we make the music exactly the way we want it to be. And that makes it really easy to go to work every day. We're not trying to please the fans. We're not trying to get on the radio. It doesn't mean that we don't think about that stuff. We do. We want them to be pleased. We like to be on the radio, and we try to make music that will do that. But the most important thing is that we please ourselves
Mm.
creatively. And when we do that, the fans seem to like it. We get more airplay. Everything seems to go better, you know?
Yeah.
And so that makes it very easy to go to work every day.
Mm. Now, like when you the kind of wrapping into like process, what headspace do you have to be in to kind of write a song or create new compositions? Like what headspace are you in at the time of creation?
Well, you gotta, for one thing, we pray now. So me and Doc, we get together. First thing we do is we pray,
Mm.
and then we talk. And when we can talk about anything, or we may have some ideas written down, a hook, a lyrical line, a lyrical story, a rhythm. It might be a certain song that we dig. We want to write something in that vein. We'll just talk about it. And once something comes to us, it's like fishing. You just reel it in. And so it might be a rhythm, let's say. And so I'll sing the rhythm into a little microphone and play some chords to it until we find something we like, and then we'll go, oh, and I say, oh, you could sing this to it. And he'll say, yeah, but you could change that word, and we'll just start reeling it in piece by piece. It might be a hook, like I got this hook that I want to make the memorable part of the song that gets repeated over and over. So we have to write a story that leads to that hook. And the first verse has to lead to the hook, and the second one, you have to develop that story, and then you do like a left turn or something musically or lyrically or chordally for a bridge, and then you go back and you sell it all the way out. And once you're in that creative process, it's not as though you need an inspiration to continue going, because it's just going, man. It's a process that encourages you to finish.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kind of looking back over the span of your breadth of your work, do you have a moment of like, this was my greatest accomplishment kind of moment, or do you just like focus on the present? I was kind of curious because with your historic breadth of work, it was, I kind of wondered if um, you ever looked back and say, oh, I'm most proud of that moment specifically, or does that even occur?
I can't say that I look back and go, I'm most proud of that moment. I can say, people will say, what's your favorite album? Immediately, Urban Renewal.
Yeah.
Now, that record didn't sell as much as some of my other records, but I felt we were firing on all 10 cylinders, lyrically, production-wise, playing-wise, solo-wise, vocally, in every way. And I love that record, but I love all the other ones too, and I'm proud of all the others. So I don't look back and go, that was the thing I'm most proud of, because I'm proud of Back to Oakland and T.O.P., and I'm proud of Monster Unleashed and the later project. I'm really proud of my new projects, and I know that I'll be proud of the ones that I do next, because I have a standard that I live by, so that I'm going to make sure I hit that mark every time, and I stay in the present. I don't sort of hang my hat on, oh, that was my heyday. Certainly I had a high point in my career in the early 70s, got a lot of airplay. I think it was at a time when my type of band was supposed to hit, and that's great. Doesn't mean that won't happen again. It could happen any second,
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm going to hit in another way. Maybe I'll write a song and somebody's going to go, I'm redoing that song, and it's going to be a #1 hit for some other artist. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I know that it's going to be good.
Yeah. And kind of wrapping back to kind of say the 80s, I've heard or read somewhere that maybe Huey Lewis kind of pushed you through the 80s. Is that true, or was that?
Yeah, Huey Lewis was very helpful to us at our difficult time in our career.
Mm-hmm.
It was right when he hit really big with Hard Rock and Roll, and then Sports. And the Sports album was like #1 in the world. And we had already done some recording with him, and he was a big fan of the band, as were the members of his band. And we had become friendly, and he came and he said, would you consider bringing the horns out on the road with us, And I said, I have the band, I can't just leave the band. And he said, well, you know, we love it when you guys sit in. The audience loves it. We're really hitting the mark now. We got money to pay you, and you know, just would you think about it? You know, and I thought about it. I went back to him. I said, you know, I'll make you a deal. If you allow me to bring the band out to the major cities where you play, and we'll do midnight concerts, and you promise me you'll announce it at the concert, and promise and invite everybody to come down and see Tower Power after the show. Let's say at the Bottom Line in New York, and we're all going down to sit in with them. And they did that. You know, we would play different cities, and they would announce at the arena that Tower Power is playing tonight at midnight, and we're all going down to sit in with them. It's going to be a party. We hope you'll come. And the place was besieged with fans.
Cool.
And he mentioned us in every interview and featured us prominently in his show. So he was very helpful at a time when we needed help. And also at the time, we wound up doing 16 appearances with the horns on David Letterman. So those two things, you know, sort of got our career back on track. But Huey, we owe a lot to Huey.
That's very, you know, kind of fortuitous, and that's great. So, how do you see? What do you like now? Presently, how do you? Where do you see? I guess where do you see the band going now? Musically, has anything sound-wise changed, or have you added new elements, or have you stuck through? I know you said you really like you've stuck through who you guys are in sound and voice, but has there any new little elements you've added with the current technology or anything like that, or current producing techniques? Or
we use all the current technology, and we love using it. And I learned an important lesson from Huey Lewis in the 80s. He told me, he says, you know, technology, don't be afraid to use it. He goes, just make sure you're using it. Don't let it use you. And that's a fine line to walk, you know. But we have very high standards, and I teamed up on these last two projects with a great producer named Joe Vanelli, and he and I produced both records together, and he's very technologically savvy. He's an excellent musician. He's an excellent producer and an excellent engineer. So those elements in our sound have been tweaked up a level by teaming up with him. And now we're doing a 50-year DVD documentary anniversary release. And I've mixed 13 songs, and I got 9 more to mix, and then reel in the video editing and put in some documentary material, and that'll be out next year. And then I'm sure we'll be doing some more recording. We just did a song with Jacob Collier, who's a protege of Quincy Jones, and he actually wrote a song about Tower of Power and had us all play on it, and he sang on it. We all sang together, and that should be out sometime soon. Getting ready to do more dates with this band Lettuce, and I wrote this song about the COVID-19 pandemic. And you know, we got a new booking agency, so we're doing dates with sort of younger jam band type stuff. This one band called String Cheese Incident. Apparently they're big fans of our band, and they approached them. They said, yeah, we'd love Tower Power to open. So we're going to be seeing a lot of bigger venues and younger people, and that's great. It's what we want. So I just see things growing, and I look to do more recording with other artists and make new Tower Power projects and just push the bar globally. So we go to more countries. We've never been to South America. I'd love to go down there and play all through South America.
Yeah.
And just more and more globally, you know.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I was actually going to ask too, because I didn't know, where have you guys toured across the U.S.? Have you gone to Europe? Not South America, no. Have you gone to Africa, or where have you toured internationally, I guess?
We play all over Europe pretty regularly, and we do very well there. We play all over Asia, especially Japan, but we do really great in Korea as well. We play Shanghai, China. We played Jakarta, Indonesia. We played Bangkok, Thailand. We've done New Zealand and Australia several times now.
Hmm.
We played in Cape Town, Africa. So we get around the globe, but we want to do more.
Hmm. I feel like the South Americans really pick up on, um, U.S. Cultural uh, uh, art forms and mediums, especially music. I know a lot of bands that were bigger in Europe or South America comparatively to the States. So I feel like Tower of Power would be really interesting down in South America. Um, do you have anything kind of left to accomplish with all this, with all your accomplishments? Do you still have anything on the list where you would like to check off? I guess. Um,
I'd
oh,
love to have a song in a movie.
mm,
You know, I'd love to have a big song in a movie, a song that's, so successful in a movie that it gets nominated for an Oscar.
yeah,
And I'd like to do a release that gets at least nominated for a Grammy, if not gets one.
mm,
I'd like to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But if none of those things happen, I'm already overpaid and I
mm,
have no complaints.
mm. Now, like kind of just a futuristic question. What do you think, soul will go into the future? Like, how do you see it progressing, um, that genre? Because now there's a lot of digital pop and stuff like that, and electro pop and kind of party music as well. I've heard, but what do you think soul will evolve to in the coming years?
I think soul music is a type of music that, a certain segment of the public loves, and that segment of the public will always be present. I mean, young people will grow to love soul music, and it's the same for bluegrass. I'm a bluegrass fan. I love Alison Krauss music. It's the same for heavy metal. It's the same for rock and roll. It's the same for classic rock. People are always going to like classic rock, and I'm not one of these people that bashes present day music. You see certain artists say, "Oh, this rap, that's not music." There's music in everything, and there's music for everyone, and there's always great music, and there's always junk, and
Mm,
the young people will always find the great music, and they'll always be junk as well. But it's all going to be here. It's not going away. People need music, and I think soul music is an integral part of the music business. It's not going to leave. Nobody's going to look back and say, boy, remember soul music? That was really cool. What happened to it? I don't
yeah,
think that's going to happen.
yeah, yeah. Um, I guess yeah, we can wrap. I know you have a busy schedule, and so I guess thank you for the conversation. And be well.
My pleasure.
Take
Take
care.
care, Robert.
Be well.